So thank you and for joining us today and welcome. My name is Emmanuel Proussaloglou, work at CityLAB, and we're going to be talking today primarily about the Small Lots Big Impacts initiative, but actually more broadly, really about housing policy that we see as really being kind of essential to leverage or to use, let's say, to be able to build the types of projects we're hoping to see on the sites in the Small Lots RFQ. For this is hopefully going to be useful for people who are interested in competing in small lots and moving forward with us as the RFQ gets published here in the next month or so. But also just for anyone interested in building kind of smaller scale, let's say, housing in Los Angeles. We've got a really amazing panel of experts here who are going to give the way this is going to work, let's say, is they're going to give short presentations, something like 8 minutes or so per person. And we're going to run the gamut from ADUs all the way up to, the transit-oriented opportunity areas program in LA's new CHIP ordinance. So again, from sort of smaller scale all the way up to higher scale. And then really we're going to spend something like 15 or 20 minutes at the end answering questions and trying to really get to the bottom of some of the questions you guys might have. So I'm just going to introduce everyone first. The first speaker is going to be Minye Pak. Minye is Chief of Development Services and Case Management, and also a zoning engineer at the LA Department of Building and Safety. Thanks again for joining us, Minye, and she's going to be talking a lot about accessory dwelling units and sort of how we can leverage those in Los Angeles. Next will be Nicholas Ayars, who's a senior city planner at the LA Department of City Planning. He'll really be focused on SB 9, and again, how you can utilize that on some of the smaller lots here in LA. Third speaker is going to be Kevin Fulton, City Planning Associate in the LA Department of City Planning, and he'll be focused on SB 1123 and the Corridor Transition Incentive Program, which are really aimed at kind of unlocking, let's say, missing middle housing at slightly higher densities here in LA. And then last is going to be Wajiha Ibrahim and Allyn Reyes, and they both work with the City of LA Planning Department as well. Wajiha is a city planner and Allyn's a planning assistant. And they'll really be talking about the Citywide Housing Implementation Program, the new CHIP, and the Transit Opportunity Incentive Area programs too. So we'll kind of popcorn amongst the four speakers and then come together again for questions. So Minye, please take it away. Also, I guess I should mention there's a Q&A feature in here. As questions come up, please add your questions in there. We'll try to get to as many as we can by the end of the session and see if we can answer some offline as well and upload a document. This is being recorded. It'll be on our website after the fact as well. So yeah, hopefully that's everything. Thanks, Minye. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Minye Pak. I am the Chief of Development Services, Case Management, and Zoning Engineer at the City of Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety. Today's ADU presentation will provide an overview of ADU options in the City of LA and also highlight some key considerations to assist in navigating through them. I'll begin with some background on ADU policy. In recent years, ADUs have increasingly been recognized as an important housing option as they are generally more affordable, can provide a source of rental income for homeowners, and address the current housing crisis. With that in mind, state legislature has passed several key bills, each with increasing flexibility and streamlining provisions, as shown on this timeline. In parallel, the City of LA passed an accessory dwelling unit ordinance in 2019, which formally established the city's ADU regulations. With each state bill that has passed since then, there was a need for the city to provide corresponding implementation memos to ensure the city's regulations remained consistent with state law. The current implementation memo, which supersedes all previous memos, is ZA Memo 143, Revision 1, dated August 1st, 2025. This memo provides a summary of state and local ordinance ADU options, highlights important regulations, and provides clarifications through a Q&A section. It is a crucial resource for ensuring the city's ADU policies are fully aligned with the most current state mandates. ZA Memo 143 has two tables at the end of the document which summarize the ADU options. Table 1 contains the 5 different detached ADU options, and Table 2 summarizes the 5 attached ADU options. It is important to understand how to navigate the various options through the tables. The rows of the tables show the key requirements, standards, and permissions, such as limits on square footage, height, parking, and additional ADU options on the lot. Each column of the tables represents an ADU type. Once an ADU type is selected, all of the requirements of that column must be complied with. Provisions from other columns may not be mixed and matched. There are also footnotes and hyperlinked questions scattered throughout the tables. It is, again, very important to review the related footnotes and Q&A carefully to ensure a comprehensive understanding and application of the regulations. So what are the ADU options for my lot? When determining what ADU options are available for a lot, there are several things to consider. First, the lot must be zoned for residential use. The primary dwellings on the lot will then determine whether it is a single-family lot or a multifamily lot. For a single-family lot, it must contain a single-family dwelling building. Some other options are multiple detached single-family dwellings, or a combination of detached single-family dwelling and a detached multifamily dwelling. For a multifamily lot, there must be a multifamily dwelling. A multifamily dwelling is a building with 2 or more dwelling units, not including ADUs or JADUs. There can also be multiple multifamily dwellings or multifamily dwelling with a single-family dwelling on a lot. For a lot which has both a single-family dwelling and a multifamily dwelling, the lot must be designated as either a single-family lot or a multifamily lot, but not both. Once a lot has been established as either single-family or multifamily, only the corresponding ADU types may be proposed for the lot. The next thing to consider is whether to develop attached or detached ADUs or a combination of both. This will mostly be based on lot constraints and space and the desired number of units on the lot. It will also depend on the design constraints of the selected ADU type. There are ordinance ADUs, which are ADU types provided by the City of Los Angeles ADU Ordinance, and there are state ADU types, also known as 66323 units. Ordinance ADUs sometimes provide more flexibility than the state ADUs, but are limited to 1 per lot and subject to local zoning standards. State ADU types often are more prescriptive and sometimes not subject to local zoning standards. There are also the allowable combinations of ADUs to consider for a lot. These are listed out comprehensively on the ZA Memo 143 tables on the row labeled Additional Allowed ADU JADU Options for the Lot. State law combinations, or 66323 units, are shown in the HCD handbook. For a single-family lot, there can be an attached state ADU plus attached JADU to the single-family dwelling, plus 1 detached state ADU. For a multifamily lot with an existing multifamily dwelling, there can be attached ADUs up to 25% of the existing multifamily dwelling units, plus up to 8 detached ADUs, not to exceed the number of existing dwelling units on the lot. For a proposed multifamily dwelling, there can only be up to 2 detached state ADUs. There can also be a combination of state ADUs and ordinance ADUs on a lot. For ordinance ADUs in general, only 1 is allowed per lot. So the available combinations would be 1 attached ordinance ADU plus a detached state ADU option, or a detached ordinance ADU plus an attached state ADU option. For JADUs, only 1 is allowed per lot attached to a single-family dwelling on a lot which is designated as a single-family lot. So I'll quickly go over now some examples of projects which maximize the number of ADUs on a lot. The first is for a proposed single-family dwelling on a lot. There is also another proposed single-family dwelling per SB 9 2-unit development for a total of 2 detached single-family dwellings. On Table 1, for the detached ADU options, I have selected the ordinance ADU type, which is allowed for a proposed single-family dwelling as the required main use of the lot. Further down that column, it will show the number of allowed ADUs for this option, which is 1 per lot. So 1 detached ordinance ADU is allowed for this lot. The next row after that shows that the additional ADU JADU options for a single-family dwelling site is 1 attached state ADU and 1 JADU. This brings us to a total of 2 detached single-family dwellings, 1 attached ordinance ADU, 1 attached JADU, and 1 detached state ADU. The next example is for a proposed 12-unit multifamily dwelling. Table 1 for the detached ADU options brings us to the multiple new detached state ADUs for a proposed multifamily dwelling. The available number of detached state ADUs for a proposed multifamily dwelling is 2 per lot. The next row shows that the additional ADU options for a proposed multifamily dwelling is 1 attached ordinance ADU. This brings us to a total of a proposed 12-unit multifamily dwelling, 2 detached state ADUs, and 1 attached ordinance ADU. The final example is an existing multifamily dwelling. We'll use the same example of 12 units, except that in this case, the multifamily dwelling is existing, not proposed. So table 1 shows the same detached state ADU option for existing multifamily dwellings. Further down the column, it will show that the number of detached state ADUs allowed for an existing multifamily dwelling is up to 8 per lot, not to exceed the number of existing dwelling units on the lot. In this example, for a 12-unit multifamily dwelling, it exceeds the 8 limit for this option, so up to 8 detached state ADUs are allowed on the lot. The next row shows the additional ADU options for the lot. For an existing multifamily dwelling, there can also be 1 attached ordinance ADU or multiple attached state ADUs. Since the multiple state ADUs yield a greater number of attached ADUs, we will select that option. So going to table 2 for the attached ADU options, it describes the number of attached state ADUs to be up to 25% of the existing units of the multifamily dwelling building. In this case, 25% of 12 units is 3 units. Therefore, 3 attached state ADUs are also allowed. This brings us to a total of, for an existing 12-unit multifamily dwelling, there are 8 detached state ADUs and 3 attached state ADUs available. So there are many more combinations of ADUs, all of which can be found on tables 1 and 2 of ZA 143. The 3 that I just covered are just some of the typical ones that yield a higher number of units on a lot. Due to the various ADU options and available combinations and different design and development standards for each type, it is really important to understand them in detail to ensure a successful project. What we covered today was just a general overview of the ADU types, but the real work begins when navigating through the details of the design elements. I've listed here some of the other general considerations, and I've also provided a list of resources and links, including the ZA Memo 143, the City of LA Ordinance, the HCD Handbook, as well as some websites and links to some of the services we provide here at LADBS. That brings us to the end of our ADU presentation. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thanks, Minye. It's super interesting and exciting, I think, sort of this ADU bonanza that we can, let's say, actualize now on LA sites is really great. And from what I understand, a little bit of a new kind of way of being able to. Nicholas, it's over to you now to talk a little bit about SB 9.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Nick Ayars. I'm a senior city planner with our development services case management section. and I am here to talk about SB 9 and how we're implementing it in the city of Los Angeles, and some considerations to look out for as you move forward with this small lots, big impacts process. So what is SB 9? You've probably heard it called something like the duplex bill or the bill that ended single family zoning in the state. Formally it's called the California Housing Opportunity and More Efficiency Act, or the HOME Act. It went into effect on January 1st, 2022. It's been over 3.5 years now. It's been in effect, and we've been implementing it in the city of Los Angeles. And it allows for two separate ministerial processes that can be combined together. The first is a 2-unit development, or what we call a TUD, and this allows for the development of up to 2 primary dwelling units on a lot zoned for single-family dwellings, right? So 2 primary dwelling units, and that also allows you to combine that with the ADU provisions Minye just talked about, to get 2 primary dwelling units plus any ADUs that you're eligible for on that property. The second process is the urban lot split. So this allows for the subdivision of a single family zoned lot into 2 individual parcels, and lets you get around some limitations like minimum lot size and other lot dimensions. So here's some visual examples of TUD combinations, right? So the top left, you have 2 single family dwellings, or what we call primary dwellings, along with a detached ADU, right? Next example is on the right there is a duplex, right? So that's still 2 primary dwellings. They're just contained within a duplex, and then they have a detached accessory dwelling unit. Down on the bottom left corner, you see again the 2 single family dwellings or primary dwellings, along with the ADUs they're eligible for, right? So you see a junior ADU attached to one of them, and then you see a detached ADU. The last combination, and one that seems to be the most popular in our experience on previously undeveloped or recently cleared lots, is the duplex, along with the 2 detached accessory dwelling units. It's important to note those 2 detached accessory dwelling units can be attached to each other so long as it meets all the building code requirements, and you could sort of create a double duplex scenario on a single family on an eligible single family zone site.
Nick, maybe it was just me, but right when you said it's important to kind of note this, you cut out for a second. Do you mind repeating that sentence again? A minute ago, you just said it's important to note about the detached accessory dwelling units. I'm not sure if
Okay,
you
yes.
cut
So
out for
the
anyone else
detached
as well.
accessory dwelling units, those can be attached together and create a double duplex. Just note that, when attaching them together, they still have to meet all the applicable building codes. There's nothing in ADU law or SB 9 law that gets them around applicable building codes for attached units. Okay, so SB 9 urban lot split development examples. So you could see on all of these, we've denoted or noted the new property lines. So, one on the top left here is pretty basic. It's a typical rectangular lot with street frontage there on the left-hand side. And, the new property line just runs right in between the 2 structures. If those were existing structures, they would be allowed to maintain non-conforming setbacks. If they're new structures, they would have to maintain 4-foot side yard setbacks from that new property line and the existing property lines there on the side, as well as the rear yard. The next example you could see is this is a flag lot configuration. If you do create a flag lot, you still have to maintain some amount of street frontage for that lot. There has to be access to the public right-of-way. And that can't be something like an alley or a walk street. It actually has to be a public street right of way. And like the SB 19 unit developments, any development proposed on a lot split can be combined with ADU law to get any ADUs you'd otherwise be eligible for. So the bottom examples, this is someone proposing a duplex with on one lot, and then on the new lot, two single-family dwellings, right? So this is someone who's combining both the SB9 two-unit development provisions as well as the SB9 urban lot split provisions. It's really important to note when using a lot split and combining it with either the two-unit development provisions or just utilizing ADUs. State law is very clear that if on any lot created as part of an urban 9 urban lot split, the maximum amount of dwellings inclusive of accessory dwelling units is 2, right? So, we're showing the max build out here. You wouldn't be able to go in and say, hey, I have a duplex on newly created lot A. I'm also going to add ADUs. Under SB9, like I said, any lot created using the SB9 urban lot split process, maximum number of dwelling units is 2. So eligibility criteria. I'm going to run through this really quickly. If you have any questions, let us know. But it has to be a single family zoned lot, right? In the city of Los Angeles, lots that are zoned for multifamily do allow for single family uses. But feedback from HCD and the state is clear. This is only applicable to single family zoned lots. So in the city of LA, that's basically all lots starting with RA up through RW. So that's important to note. I don't think there's a lot of lots in phase 1 of this program that are zoned as single family zones, maybe 2 or 3. So, really important to note this is only for single family zoned lots. Legal parcel within an urbanized area, that's pretty much every lot in the city of Los Angeles. It can't be historic. So basically there can't be a designated historic cultural monument, either locally designated, state or federally designated. And also it can't be within a historic district, including a historic preservation overlay zone or HPOZ. Further, the site can't be what's called a sensitive site. So there can't be things like wetlands, identified hazardous waste sites, floodplains, floodways, other sort of water courses, conservation areas, habitat areas. There can't be habitat for protected species on the site. Additional considerations, so very high fire hazard severity zones. If the property is within a very high fire hazard severity zone, SB9 is not prohibited. It just requires compliance with the adopted fire hazard mitigation measures pursuant to the existing building standards and or the state fire mitigation measures. So in the city of LA, basically there's a specific building code and fire code requirements for dwellings built within the very high fire hazard severity zone. So long as those are complied with, the building or the proposed dwellings can still be built within the very high fire hazard severity zone. Same thing with earthquake fault zones. So how do you check your eligibility? If you're familiar with ZEMAS, or you go to www.zemas.lacity.org, you look up the site, you drop down the planning and zoning tab after looking up the address. And then about a little bit more than halfway down, you're going to see a line item that says SB9 eligibility. You're going to click view, and it's going to pop up an eligibility checklist that basically says whether or not the site has any of those, violates any of the eligibility criteria that I previously listed. If you have questions about the eligibility of a site, I'm going to give you our contact information at the end. Feel free to reach out to our SB9 team. We'll look at the site and let you know, is the site eligible, is it not, or some other things to keep in mind when moving forward. So basic development standards for SB9 projects. One off-street covered parking space is required per primary dwelling unit on the site. So if you're proposing a duplex, you need 2 off-street covered parking spaces. However, if the site is within a half-mile walking distance of a high-quality transit corridor, major transit stop, or a car share vehicle drop-off or pickup location, no parking is required. Parking could be provided optionally, but it doesn't have to be provided. Setbacks. So the underlying front yard setback will still apply. So whatever the zone requires for that front yard setback will be applicable. However, SB9 projects benefit from reduced 4-foot rear and side yard setbacks. Existing structures, when you're proposing a lot split, can remain and be non-conforming. It's important to note that all other underlying objective zoning standards, so things like floor area ratio or residential floor area, height, things like encroachment plane, still apply unless it would physically preclude an urban lot split and or the development of up to 2 800 square foot dwelling units. So if an objective zoning standard would, create a physical preclusion, it has to be waived. And then compliance with building and fire code is always required. Nothing in SB 9 allows you to get around things like fire code requirements or building code requirements related to things like openings into a habitable unit that are within a certain distance of a lot line. So urban lot splits, I could run through this really quickly. So it allows for the subdivision of a single family zone lot into 2 parcels. It's important to note that the new lot cannot be smaller than 40% of the original. And it can't be any smaller than 1,200 square feet. Number of units, like I said earlier, each lot created by an urban lot split can be developed with a maximum of 2 units, and that is inclusive of ADUs and JADUs. Urban lot split limitation. So there is a 3-year owner occupancy requirement from the applicant or for the applicant to reside on one of the lots created by the urban lot split. Qualified nonprofits and land trusts are exempt from this requirement. Previous urban lot split. So if the lot has already been split using the SB 9 urban lot split process, it cannot be re-subdivided again through another SB 9 urban lot split. And then adjacent parcels cannot be split by the same owner or someone acting in concert with that owner. 2-unit development and an urban lot. Two primary dwellings on each lot. If you go this way, ADUs and JADUs are not permitted because, again, every lot created by an urban lot split, the maximum number of units is 2. So if you're doing a 2-unit development, you're proposing 2 units, and thus, you can't get any more through ADUs or JADUs. Concurrent permitting is allowed. However, please note that a building permit cannot be issued for your 2-unit development until that final map is recorded. Applicable fees. So for 2-unit developments, this just goes through the standard LADBS building permit process. So the standard permitting fees, any applicable development impact fees for dwelling units are required. For urban lot splits, the urban lot split parcel map is processed ministerially through the Department of City Planning. With surcharges, our application fee is just a little under $5,500. However, it's really important to note that if you know this, if you've done a subdivision before, all applicable subdivision and map recordation fees to other departments are going to apply. So it could cost around $50,000 when all is said and done to apply for an urban lot split and then go through the process of recording those map conditions and legally subdividing the lot into 2 new legal lots. So contact information for any questions you have related to SB 9, the process, requirements. If you have questions about eligibility or want to set up a virtual consultation, please email planning.sb9@lacity.org. We also have a website that has our SB 9 memo, fact sheet, all sorts of helpful information. So it's important to note that. And then, like Minye said, if you would like to reach out to building and safety, maybe you're going to propose a combination of units, both primary dwelling units and ADUs, you could reach out to the Development Services Case Management section to set up a virtual preliminary review meeting so someone from DBS and planning can be present to sort of help walk you through your questions and take a look at the site and flag any potential limitations, or take a look at your site plan and flag any potential issues there. So again, planning.sb9@lacity.org for any questions, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Perfect. And so relevant, I think, the first presentation and this one. Kevin, over to you now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Fulton, City Planning Associate with the department's Housing Policy team. We put together a short presentation on SB 684 and 1123, as well as the Corridor Transitions Program, both of which are recent efforts from the state and our department to streamline approval of missing middle development. We'll start with a quick refresher on SB 684 and cover key updates in SB 1123 and AB 130. Additionally, we'll also go over some new additions to the implementation memo aimed at streamlining review. We'll finish with corridor transitions, which was part of the recently adopted Citywide Housing Incentive Program ordinance. SB 684 and 1123 both amended a law called the Starter Home Revitalization Act. Since this law has been amended a few times recently and will likely be amended again in the future, we are going to refer to it by the official name, or SHRA for short. The SHRA provides a ministerial approval process for subdivisions of up to 10 parcels and corresponding housing development projects up to 10 units. Eligible projects would not be subject to discretionary review and must be approved or denied within 60 days of the city receiving a completed application. Moving on, SHRA projects must utilize one of the ownership structures listed on this slide. The housing development's average total floor space also cannot exceed 1,750 net habitable square feet. Additionally, SHRA projects cannot result in the demolition or alteration of housing units that have been rented in the last 5 years or are subject to the city's rent stabilization ordinance. The law also has many site eligibility exclusions, including high or very high fire hazard severity zones, earthquake fault zones, or habitat for protected species. Regarding the fire zones, please keep in mind that the city is currently working on adopting expanded fire zone maps from CAL FIRE. These updated maps won't be added to ZEMIS until they are adopted by the City Council sometime next year. Now, moving on to the substantive changes SB 1123 made to the SHRA. Most significantly, eligibility was expanded from multifamily zones to sites that are vacant and zoned for single-family residential development. Vacant in this context means a site that has no permanent structure unless the permanent structure is abandoned and uninhabitable. To qualify, a site would only need to be vacant at the time an application is submitted. Our SB 1123 implementation memo will also detail the criteria for an existing dwelling to be declared abandoned and uninhabitable. SB 1123 also adds different standards for the newly eligible single-family zones. These sites cannot be larger than 1.5 acres pre-subdivision, and any new lots must be at least 1,200 square feet. A recent HCD technical assistance letter stated that these minimum lot sizes are the law's effective pre-subdivision density standard. Density restrictions from the underlying zone would apply post-subdivision, but each new lot would have to allow at least one single-family dwelling and an attached ADU or JADU. SB 1123 also changes the minimum density requirements for non-housing element sites. For context, the law has separate minimum density standards that apply to housing element and non-housing element sites. In SB 1123, non-housing element sites must be built to 66% of the maximum allowable density or 30 units per acre, whichever is greater. In the memo, we allow ADUs or JADUs to count toward this requirement, so vacant single-family sites with a pre-subdivision lot size of up to 1 acre could still utilize the SHRA. Notably, this is less than the law's 1.5 acre pre-subdivision maximum lot size for these zones. SB 1123 also prohibits subdivisions from resulting in an existing dwelling unit being alienable from the title to any other dwelling unit on the lot. In practice, this means condo conversions are not allowed under the SHRA. Cities can also no longer enforce frontage requirements. So lots created by the SHRA don't have to provide at least 20 feet of street frontage or a 20-foot access strip. However, other access standards from the fire code would still apply. Finally, under AB 130, SHRA projects will be able to include one remainder parcel that does not count towards the 10-lot maximum or the law's minimum density requirements. A remainder parcel can retain existing land uses or structures, cannot contain any new residential units, and cannot be exclusively dedicated to serving the housing development. Designated remainder parcels do not have any minimum or maximum lot sizes and cannot be further subdivided in a future SHRA or SB9 application. The intent behind this is to allow SHRA projects on larger lots with existing uses. So, for example, a developer could designate an existing strip mall or apartment building as a remainder parcel and build up to 10 townhomes elsewhere on the lot. We also want to highlight a few additions to the memo we're proposing. There have been 8 SHRA applications submitted since SB 684 took effect a year ago in the city, only one of which has been approved. A big issue we've heard internally and from applicants is the uncertainty about applying the law's prohibition on enforcing any subdivision, design, or zoning standards that would physically preclude a project built up to its protected density, which is either 30 units per acre or the maximum zoning density, whichever is larger. In the memo, we're creating a new process for developers to submit a request supported by corroborating evidence that the advisory agency waive or modify any local standard that would physically preclude a project built up to the site's protected density. We also clarify that these modification or waiver requests can include local standards that impose or have the effect of imposing any local standard prohibited by the law. The advisory agency may deny or modify these requests. However, any denials or modifications must include an explanation in the decision letter detailing why the local standards did not physically preclude the project. Next, we've gotten many questions about how the baseline mansionization ordinance requirements would apply to SHRA projects in R1 zones. These regulations were intended for detached single-family homes, not townhomes, and we've tried to provide as much clarity as possible. Of note, the SHRA guarantees a minimum FAR of 1.0 in 3 to 7 unit projects and 1.25 in 8 to 10 unit projects. This would preempt the BMO's FAR regulations that max out at 0.65. Encroachment plans could also not be required between the units, as the law bans building separations that exceed what is required by the California Building Code. Next steps, we're working to issue the SB 1123 implementation memo as soon as possible, but we don't yet have a concrete release date. However, we will be sending out an announcement to the DCP email list, so we encourage any interested parties to sign up on our website. Updates to the relevant forms, webpage, and ZEMAS checklist will also be released concurrently with the memo. Following the memo, we will be announcing a homeownership-focused work program later this fall that will include a SHRA implementation ordinance. We'll be collaborating with the department's urban design studio in this effort that will go beyond what's allowed in the state law and investigate ways to further streamline the city's subdivision process. Next, we'll move on to the Corridor Transitions Program, also known as CT, which is part of the Mixed Income Incentive Program within the Citywide Housing Incentive Program ordinance. CT is intended to accommodate lower scale missing middle outcomes in proximity to transit and in higher opportunity areas. The idea here is this would encourage walkable neighborhoods and access to opportunities. Eligible sites previously limited to 2 to 5 units in R2 or RD zones are now able to build up to 6 to 16 units of mixed income housing through the new corridor transition incentive areas. While the SHRA is more directly focused on homeownership, the Corridor Transitions Program can be utilized for both for sale and rental units. Moving on, the slide provides a helpful visualization of the CT program's eligibility criteria and how it relates to the Opportunity Corridors program you'll hear about in the next presentation. As you can see, CT development incentives scale down as you move further away from the Opportunity Corridor. It is also important to note that CT projects only have access to the program's base incentives and cannot request on or off menu incentives or waivers. CT projects are required to comply with performance design standards like open space and street-facing entries. In return, they are able to go straight to LADBS without any city planning review required. In contrast, SHOA projects will be reviewed by city planning in a ministerial version of the normal parcel or tract map processes. CT projects also must orient ground floor entrances towards open space. On-site parking also cannot face public streets. Finally, to close, this slide showcases examples of the housing typologies the CT program is intended to promote. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions during the Q&A session.
Thanks, Kevin. Awesome. Wajiha, Allyn, I think you guys are up next. And just to not rush your presentation, maybe what we should do is we're gathering the Q&A questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can before the hour's up, but there's not a whole lot of time left. But we'll answer the ones that are outstanding after the fact too. So take, the full time you guys need for the presentation, and then we can answer the questions offline and upload that document to our website as well. Thanks.
Sounds great. Hi, everyone. I'm Wajiha Ibrahim, city planner from Department of City Planning. Most of you are already familiar with the recently adopted Citywide Housing Incentive Program, or CHIP ordinance, and Kevin touched on aspects of it just a moment ago. Today, we're focusing on one of its three components, the Mixed Income Incentive Program, or MIP. I want to introduce my colleague, Allyn Reyes, who's been instrumental in developing the policy framework around this program and will help us kind of do a deeper dive.
Hi, everyone. The Citywide Housing Incentive Program, or CHIP, was adopted just about 6 months ago, and it's great to be here to share the incentives most relevant to the Small Lots Big Impacts initiative. Within CHIP, we have three programs. We have the State Density Bonus Program, the Mixed Income Incentive Program, and the Affordable Housing Incentive Program. So as Wajiha just mentioned, today's presentation is going to focus on MIP, specifically the Opportunity Corridors and Transit-Oriented Incentive Areas Program. MIP gives applicants the ability to utilize 3 separate incentive areas depending on the eligibility. The Transit-Oriented Incentive Areas Program, also known as TOIA, the Opportunity Corridors Program, also known as OC, and the Corridor Transitions Program that my colleague Kevin just shared in the previous presentation. The Opportunity Corridors Incentive Areas and the Opportunity Corridor Transition Incentive Areas are restricted to parcels that are both in proximity to transit and exclusively located in higher opportunity areas to affirmatively further fair housing. OC incentives are intended for sites on major corridors in transit and job-rich areas, while the TOIA program offers incentives for sites citywide near public transit. The TOIA program expands on the existing TOC guidelines by offering greater density bonuses in order to stay competitive with bonuses offered under state law. So the image on the right is a proposed rendering of what you could build through the TOIA program. Developers receive greater incentives depending on the opportunity area their project is located in, with bonuses scaling up from TOIA T1, which in TOC would be TOC tiers 1 and 2, and maxing out at T3, which in TOC would be TOC tier 4. And there are a few exceptions for projects pursuing this program. So sites with a maximum allowable residential density of less than 5 are allowed a 60% density bonus increase in T1, 70% in T2, and 80% in T3. And sites with a maximum allowable residential density of less than 5, designated historic resources or non-contributors are not eligible for FAR increases and are not eligible for a height increase more than 1 additional story, which is up to 11 additional feet. And projects may use the bonus FAR of their specific plan or overlay district in place of the table incentives. So what's the difference between the TOC and TOIA programs? The TOIA program provides more density from 100% to unlimited and more FAR specifically for commercially zoned lots to those located in higher opportunity areas. And this encourages developers to build in higher opportunity areas as TOC's density bonuses range from 50 to 80%. And the FAR in C zones range from 2.75 to 4.25 to 1. And projects under TOIA can receive ministerial review by requesting base incentives, additional incentives, or public benefit options, which I'll discuss later on. And despite this, the eligibility for TOC and TOIA are similar. And so the TOIA tiers 1 and 2 equivalent is TOIA T1. TOC Tier 3's equivalent is TOIA T2, and TOC Tier 4's equivalent is TOIA T3. This table compares the procedures for TOC and TOIA projects and visualizes how CHIP has streamlined the review process when compared to TOC. So existing TOC allows up to 3 on-menu incentives, while TOIA allows up to 4 on-menu or off-menu incentives. TOIA projects can request on-menu incentives that will be eligible for a by-right review process with the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety, while you can't do that with TOC projects. And with TOIA, you can also request off-menu incentives through the expanded administrative review process, a new process that we've created just for the CHIP ordinance. And with certain off-menu requests, though, like FAR and height, those will be sent to the state density bonus program instead of the mixed income incentive program. And then lastly, through a discretionary process, projects are able to request waivers of development standards. Opportunity corridor projects represent the larger scale housing that MIP incentivizes closest to commercial corridors in higher opportunity areas. LA's major streets have long been limited to lower scale development, with building volumes to facilitate strip malls and low densities to encourage commercial use. OC significantly changes what's possible in these areas as they're now able to build at least 5 to 8-story podiums of mixed income housing. And so the image on the right is an example of an arbitrary site in West LA to visualize the OC sub-area and what major transit surrounds it. And so the box in orange is designated as an OC3 as it's within half a mile of a metro rail station as seen in the yellow dot and is surrounded by multiple frequent bus service lines as seen in the orange dots. Opportunity corridor bonuses scale up from OC1 and max out at OC3 with 2 exceptions to the program, being that sites with designated historic resources or non-contributors are ineligible from receiving an FAR increase or height increase above one story up to 11 additional feet, and projects may use the bonus FAR of their specific plan or overlay district in place of the table incentives. And so this slide shows the additional incentives that projects can access through MIP either on menu or off menu. And these are the public benefit options that projects have access to. Public benefit options are something new that we've offered, and these allow projects the ability to utilize specific development bonuses in exchange for including community benefits as part of their project. So projects only seeking base incentives and or on-menu incentives as seen in the dark blue boxes at the top would automatically go to LABDS for review. And for projects accessing the public benefit options or incentives not on the menu, as seen in the second tier, those will go through the expanded administrative review process through city planning. Projects requesting up to 1 waiver, as seen in the bottom tier, these are discretionary and would receive a director's determination, and projects requesting more than one waiver, as also seen in the bottom tier, would also be a discretionary review that goes to City Planning Commission for their approval. So how do you know which MIP program is the right fit for your project? OC will always offer the greater bonuses and are more desirable than TOIA, but are limited to higher opportunity areas. TOIA offers more bonuses than TOC citywide, but less than OC. CT, or the Corridor Transitions Program, is only available in RD and R2 zones, but generally offers more density than TOIA on those sites in higher opportunity areas. And in lower and moderate opportunity areas, projects can participate in MIP if they are using the TOIA program. Lastly, we'd like to provide some information on the best contact for CHIP-related questions. So general CHIP questions can be directed to the Citywide Housing Policy Team at housingelement@lacity.org. Specific address or project questions can be directed to the Affordable Housing Services section at planning.priorityhousing@lacity.org. And projects that stick to the base and menu of incentives should contact the LADBS directly. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. I thought those were kind of amazing presentations, a whole lot of information. I guess we have just a couple minutes, and like I said, best thing to do seems like we'll spend time offline answering these specific questions, but maybe just kind of broadly. I'm wondering, a lot of these policies are relatively new. 6 months for CHIP, SB 1123 went on the books in July. Maybe it would be helpful in a lot of the presentations at the end, you guys sort of had your contact information, but where could be places that people could find more information, or maybe kind of where should they go to ask questions to really kind of dig even deeper into these policies? I think that'll be helpful as people try to wrap their heads around what is now possible, where a lot of this stuff wasn't maybe possible in the city even as soon as a year ago. So that might be helpful as kind of a kind of closing comment for everyone, where they can find more resources and how they can, let's say, get more support as they move forward with these projects. We could popcorn in terms of sort of order of presentations. Maybe we try that. Minye, if you're still on, where do you think people could go to get some more information about ADUs?
Yeah, sure. Our website, dbs.lacd.gov, has an ADU webpage that links all of the available resources, documents, ordinance. It also has some of our ADU standard plans listed on there, and information on there. Aside from that, we have our case management service. So you can apply for a 1.5-hour short meeting with a case manager. We will invite the appropriate other agencies such as fire department or planning department, depending on the nature of the questions, and that's to go over a specific project. So it's not really for general feasibility. It's more for, here's my lot, here's the project I'm proposing. I have these specific questions on the certain code section, or my setback or floor area, very specific questions, and we can meet for an hour and a half. It does require a small fee for us, but that is also available.
Great, thanks. Nick, I think you sort of touched on this in your presentation too, but any good places for people to kind of dip into more SB9 information?
Yeah, so like I said, planning.sb9@lacity.org is a good place, but we also have a pretty comprehensive website here that shows different development scenarios, breaks down things like the eligibility requirements and how to figure that out, as well as includes all of our different fact sheets, implementation memos, and as well as a link to the ADU memo, so you could pop over to that and see, what ADUs you'd potentially be eligible for depending on your SB9 development scenario.
Over to you, Kevin. And I think maybe one thing I think you mentioned it in your presentation, but I understand that the city planning department is really working on a kind of handful of maybe not so much new policies, but sort of new explanations, let's say, of this work. and kind of how to implement it. So if you don't mind talking about that for a minute too, I think that would be helpful for people to know.
Sure. So as I mentioned, we will be, after we release the SHRA implementation memo, we'll be starting a broad homeownership focused work program that will include implementation of that law as well as SB9 into our code. And there will also be an update to the city's ADU ordinance that will implement a state law that will allow the sale of ADUs as condos. So we'll be announcing that later in the fall. I definitely welcome your feedback on that. But once we release the implementation memo, we'll be updating our website to have be more detailed and account for what you can do with the law now. But if you're just interested in learning more about the general contours of the law, we have a webpage for SB 684. You can reference our implementation memo we issued last year. And there will be an updated ZEMIS checklist, which is a very good resource to figure out if your site is eligible.
Wonderful. And not to put you on the spot, I guess, but have you, in terms of thinking about scheduling for that implementation memo for this new 1123, do you have a sense of when that's going to come out?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. Fair enough. I mean, I know it's brand new, but I think a lot of people are going to be interested in using the law, so it'd be great. Thanks. Yeah. So then Wajiha, Allyn, maybe you guys could close us out. And again, I will put this presentation online, and I promise we'll get to all the questions after the fact because a lot of them are really, really useful to talk through.
Yeah, for us, I guess I would direct everyone to the planning.lacity.gov webpage. Within that, there's a little bit of clicking around to do, but we have a page designated for CHIP to go into the details of what project is best suited for which program, resources, commonly asked questions that we're receiving from the development community. Our team is currently working through collecting data and seeing what kind of trends exist in applications and permitting requests that we're receiving. We just hit 6 months of CHIP 2 weeks ago, so
Congrats.
it's been exciting. Yeah, it's cool to see what projects are coming through. It's also we're raising our eyebrows at seeing certain programs not being used, and so that gives us a chance to kind of understand what are the gaps in understanding the incentives, but also what did we kind of miss in not making these appetizing enough. So there's some updates coming from our end, but I would direct folks to the website to see some of those 6-month progress updates and revisions to the ordinance.
Great. Okay, well, that's exactly noon. Again, a lot of information, but we'll be sharing all this out, so hopefully people can go through it again and kind of pull as much info as they can from these presentations. We'll upload a Q&A document soon with the answers to the outstanding questions. And really just in general, maybe I should share my own resource of where to find good information. But the Small Lots website, that is smalllots.citylab.ucla.edu, is where we have really all the up-to-date information on the initiative. We have recordings of previous webinars, information on the competition, and the RFQ next stage. So keep an eye out for that for updates, and we'll be putting everything there. Thanks so much, everyone. And yeah, we're excited about this. We'll be in touch soon. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining all the presenters as well. It was really great.